I don't know the exact number of talks that are on YouTube, but I imagine there's probably somewhere getting close to 150 talks. And so we turn on the tape so that my son Jared will upload it to YouTube. He sort of trims it up and then uploads it there. I don't know how to do any of that. So he's another one that's been here for 3 years saving the talks. Hopefully, this one's worth saving. Now, one thing about spiritual practice is it's the simplest thing in the world. Don't want to complicate it. And it's one of the most difficult on the same level because our world complicates everything. It overcomplicates everything. And of course, we can do the same with spiritual practice. I mean, I have 300 books on the shelf in this room here. Is it that complicated? Well, not really, but I'm a slow learner. So I want to outline that a little bit. So I want to bring the screensaver up just one more time for those people who came in late. It's a pretty classy screensaver here. Yeah. Now, those of you who've been to Loose Leaf Hollow know that Mona Lisa's all over the place. She's on a pillow. She's in pictures. She has her own room here with a beaded curtain. She's always been important to me. I think she's kind of a model of meditation in a way. I used to teach off this picture early in my days when I was traveling to places to do retreats. I'd bring a big picture of her along. Now, there's a couple of questions maybe we'll answer in this. She'll be a help to us. They always question, like, what is she thinking about? And then, what is she smiling about? These are a couple of eternal questions about Mona Lisa that hopefully we'll answer today. And also, this picture it's a tiny picture. Da Vinci never actually finished it, and that I think is maybe it's deeply symbolic in the end. I think Da Vinci just had so many irons in the fire that he probably just he carried it around with him for a long time. He never finished it. He was designing tanks and catapults and all that. He was a Renaissance man. But the third thing is, why people have come from all over the world to see this picture, which is not really that big. But it's why they went in World War II. They went to extreme trouble to keep moving it around to keep it away from the Nazis. Yeah, that's a whole story in itself. So what's the big deal about this picture? There's a lot of pictures of Madonna-like figures and women, and why this picture? So maybe we can get to that today. I hope so. So, okay. I'm going to start with a poem that'll be the Monday morning musing tomorrow, and then we'll riff off of that. But I think the poem will lead us in the right direction. Yeah. This is a poem that came out in the course of, mostly these poems come out in the course of doing the reading and the preparation and the thinking about the talk, and this one certainly did. It's called Moving Out of the Box. Moving Out of the Box. And again, it'll be reprinted tomorrow in the Monday morning musing. Fruitful spiritual practice is all about moving out of the box. Get that image that if you really want a spiritual practice that bears fruit, it's about moving out of the box of self-centered thinking and into experiencing this moment just as it is. The four walls of the box are made entirely of self-centered, fearful, dualistic thoughts. You are always the subject, and everything else is an object to manipulate, desire, judge, or fear when you're in the box. Think about that for a minute. The four walls of the box are made entirely of self-centered, fearful, dualistic thoughts. You're always, when you're in the box, you're always the subject, and everything else is an object to manipulate, desire, judge, or fear. Everybody does time in the box. Everybody does time in the box. The only question is how much. When a novice asked the Zen master how to become free, the master challenged him to show me the handcuffs. That's a classic Zen story there. When the novice, wannabe master, asked the Zen master how to become free, the master challenged him to show me the handcuffs. It makes a huge difference to even begin to recognize the box. It makes a huge difference to even begin to recognize the box. Tibetans say recognition and liberation are simultaneous. It makes a huge difference to even recognize that you're in the box, that the box exists. Tibetans say recognition and liberation are simultaneous. So when you recognize you're thinking a self-centered thought, drop it. And now you're simply experiencing the formless field of benefaction, and you become the pearl of great price that has never lived in the shell of time and space. So when you recognize you're thinking a self-centered thought, drop it. And now you're simply experiencing the formless field of benefaction, and you become the pearl of great price that has never lived in the shell of time and space. Yeah. So let's sort of reflect on this for a little bit. Fruitful spiritual practice is all about moving out of the box of self-centered thinking and into experience this moment just as it is. So get that just basic, very simple practice, that simple image of being in the box and then moving out of the box, being in the box of self-centered, fearful, dualistic thinking, and then moving out of the box into experiencing. So thinking to experiencing is the journey, just in a couple of words. And that's when in a formal meditation practice, I mean, when we were on retreat, we sat 6 or even one day 8 30-minute periods. So even on the day when we sat the most, that was just 4 hours. What about the other 20 hours? See, so that's something to consider too. But if you have a formal practice that you practice, you know, I sit a couple times a day in my normal life. Retreats are like, a retreat like that is like a, boot camp. You don't normally, and nobody does that in a real daily life. So, but I sit a couple times a day, and then every once a year do one of those to really break through and see something a little clearer, make it a little simpler. Yeah, but if you have a practice, and hopefully, we do at least one sit every time we meet for 20 minutes, and then double, really times 4 on the Saturday morning. So we're saying four periods on that day. But normally, if you could sit once, at least once a day, or twice, I sit morning and before supper, that's great, because then that colors the rest of the time, which I call on the fly time, wherever you are. The same thing's working. All of a sudden, you're falling into a kind of self-centered, fearful thought. Oh, I'm really not amounting to much. I'm 74. What the hell is this? This is all I have to show for it. Those kinds of thoughts that we all have. You look in the mirror in the morning and Jesus, right away, fear. Okay. And so if you have a kind of practice, and if we this is giving you a cognitive kind of platform to approach it, then, you're more likely to notice when you're in the box the other 20 hours of the day, or really the other 23 hours of the day, you see. And the four walls of the box are made entirely of thoughts, self-centered, fearful, dualistic thoughts. And that's always subject object. Say, you're the subject. That's the self-centered nature of it. And then there's an object, either something that you're judging or wanting or fearing, or how can I make that object do what I want, there's where so many marriages go down the drain. And it's just, it's not a real marriage. It's just trying to make your husband or wife do what you want them to do. Boy, that's fruitless and dangerous. Yeah. Yeah. So it's just made of thoughts. It's not, that's why the Zen master said when the novice comes up and says, Master, show me the way to freedom. And he says, well, show me the handcuffs. He's holding his hands out. There are none. This is not like, iron and steel building it. We're not in actual physical jail, just thoughts. And so we have to look at thoughts. And that's partially what I want to, you really do that when you're on an intensive there. You're sitting, the bell rings, and then there's you in the silence and in the stillness, in this universe that always was, always is, and always will be. As Robert Frost said, one thing I know for sure about life, it goes on, And so we're sitting in this, and then your thoughts come in, and all of a sudden it gets really small. And some thoughts are just random, kind of just, I don't know, like just random rays of thought. Those don't interfere too much. But when a thought comes in that catches you, chances are that's a thought about me. I'm interested in me most of all, and then you're caught, and then that narrows down. That vast formless field of benefaction, as one Zen master called it, just this formless field of goodness that narrows down. Okay, and that's the key point. When you notice that, as the Tibetans say, recognition and liberation are simultaneous. As soon as you notice, oh, I'm doing it again, well, then you're halfway out of the box. And then it's helpful over a long period of time. Sometimes you just say thinking again. And then you're back. You're out of the box. You're back, maybe if only for a millisecond until the next thought grabs you. So I've had those kind of meditations, and we'll have them again where just rare, you're just almost totally in the box. You're sitting on a cushion, or you might be at a retreat, but you're just totally in the box of thinking about yourself, thinking about your problems. And then the always the challenge is, judging again. Yeah. Comparing myself to somebody else again. When you really start to notice it. See, so normally you could just drop it. Sometimes it's not even a thought. It's just a little sparkly thing. And then you can always go back to your breath, because your breath is real, you see. And the breath brings you into the body, and the body experiences things. The mind thinks, the heart experiences. The body and the heart, they experience. And so you bring yourself back to experience. We're going from thinking to experiencing. Okay. Everybody does time in the box. How much time? Joko Beck, who's a Zen master, passed away now, but her writings are still left, and I carry a lot of them in me, a lot of her simplifying things. She said she didn't think she ever met anybody who lived totally out of the box. She said, if I did, it would be a Buddha. If you're 100% out of the box all the time, that's what it would mean to be a Buddha. And she said, well, she'd never met any of them. Never met one. But it makes a big difference to be inside the box of self-centered thinking 100% of the time. And, to be out, 1%, 2%, 10%. That's what grows. How much time you spend experiencing life. See? Everybody does time in the box. So don't, there's no such thing as bad meditator. I don't have to, I went through that for a long time. God, why can't I just sit here and, well, it's It's a long process. And you just, as soon as the thing you can do is, as soon as you realize you're thinking, you're back in the box and you just drop it. And some thoughts are harder to drop than others. That's why in centering prayer, they give you a sacred word to use if it's real sticky, if you're having a hard time. Judging is a real hard one for me. Planning is, planning again, judging again, comparing myself again, shaming myself again. You can sort of note that as you drop it. And that's how you start to understand your patterns. The next time on the Saturday retreat, we'll look at, well, where does all this stuff come from? And that helps. It helps to get a cognitive grip on it. And then you can understand the process. You'll cut yourself some slack. Realize it's a long process of living more and more out of the box. So, I end with this. So when you recognize you're thinking a self-centered thought, drop it. And now you're simply experiencing the universe as it is, a formless field of benefaction. There's something positive happening here. Einstein said it at the end of his life. He said the most important question he ever asked was, is the universe a friendly place or not? This is the guy who thought about these things much. He was an out-of-the-box character, much more than probably any of us. And he said when it came down to it, is the universe a friendly place or not? And he says the answer to that question will dictate your life. And I'd say, and we'll talk about it next week, that there's rarely a baby coming out of the womb who thinks it's very friendly. And so we start off going down that road. No, this isn't a very friendly place. I better get some strategy here. We'll talk about that next week. Yeah, but that brings us to Mona Lisa. Well, what is she thinking? Nothing. She's out of the box. She's just experiencing life, and she was literally out of the box because women were never painted. That painting was made about the time Columbus was sailing the ocean blue, 1492, by Da Vinci, and women were never painted. Landscape painting wasn't really big at that time anyway. Hadn't really come in. So you got a landscape and you have a woman right there and she's sitting there and you don't know what she's doing, who she is. You don't know her role. Women were always painted in a domestic, in the box, in a domestic scene, in a building, in a box, in a kitchen. Even if you're a queen or a princess, you were in the throne room. You had a crown on. She has no role. And she's out of the box. She's just in life. Yeah. And the smile relates to that. I find a smile comes up to my lips every time I drop some horrible judgment kind of thing that I'm working on. I drop that and I take a breath. And then I'm just back experiencing the basic goodness of just being here. And even without thinking of it, a smile will come to my lips. And notice her smile is it's not like a prom queen smile or, not, waving from a float. Just the slightest relaxation of the whole thing. She is relaxed. She is just here. She is experiencing life. I don't know how that translates to where people got so into this picture that they come from all over the world to see it, but they do. And so maybe it's just that she's showing what it looks like to be out of the box. I have her companion poem over here on another pillow, which is The Scream. The Scream is life in the box. And it's all tense and it's compacted and all that, and that's life in the box. And then there's Mona, what it's like to be out of the box, present, open, available, experiencing life, enjoying it. But she has no tenseness in her body. When you really look at a good picture of it, she's just relaxed in being out of the box. She's an icon. And I ended with an image that's uh, from the New Testament, but actually Hafez picked it up. I found it in an Hafez poem. And so I think that's what another image of Mona says. And you become the pearl of great price that has never lived in the shell of time and space. Well, every pearl comes into it, it forms in a shell. But they talk about, you're a merchant who's buying and selling pearls, and then you find the pearl of great price is in a field. You sell everything to get this pearl of great price. Well, I think that's also what she is. That's when you're actually out of the box and you're living life, you're experiencing life. Those kind of people don't wage wars. Those kind of people don't judge you. Closest thing that I've ever met in real life to somebody like that was my grandmother. She was like that. That's why she's on my altar. And I look at her every day to remind myself that I don't know how much. Well, she swore one time, so she wasn't totally out of the box. But she was pretty much the person I met that was out of the box most of the time. She was just now, there's nothing wrong with thinking, by the way. Just to give you to, when you look at thought, there's two kinds of thought. There's functional thought, and there's dysfunctional thought. Functional thought is life-centered. You're baking a cake, so you have to think about the recipe and whatnot, et cetera, et cetera. My grandmother never really even, whenever she made anything, she never consulted anything. She'd learned it by heart, and a few pinches of this or whatever. Real chefs don't have to think that much; they just know how to do it. But you're doing the clothes, you're washing the clothes, you're paying the bills. That's functional thought. Doing your taxes, it's functional thought because it's life-centered. It keeps the roof over your head or whatever. I'd say that's probably 10% of the 24 hours. You got to do something like that. The other 90%, what are you doing with it? Dysfunctional thought is it's in the box. Woe is me. For weeks. Woe is me for weeks. That's what you feel the 90% of that day, you say. And you have a choice. You don't have to do that. But you have to start catching it on the cushion, as they say, informal things, and then you start noticing it in real life. And you start noticing your patterns. Judgment is a huge pattern of mine. And by watching my mind in meditation and then dropping judgment, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of times in 50 years, it weakens it. You're never going to lose the box entirely, I don't think, but you weaken it to the sense that it doesn't run your life anymore. More and more, you're out of the box. Yeah, and that's really where the practice goes. The moment you drop thinking about life and start experiencing life, you're out of the box. Practice that. It's delightful. It's delightful. Well, I think that's good enough for the talk part of this. Thanks for listening.